Hey guys, let's start with a brand new episode on Kotlin. I'm still learning Kotlin, maybe by comparing with Swift to a great extent, which is helping, by the way. In this episode, we are going to have a look at how we can do some network calls using Kotlin. I'm going to use Retrofit to make the API calls, and I had built a green grocery app on iOS using different architecture. So basically, I'm going to reuse most of the APIs used there for building this app, which is going to be a shopping cart app using MVVM on Kotlin. So let's get right into it by starting with the login feature. I'm going to start with modifying some of the things which we had done in the last episode, where it was majorly doing only the validations for these fields and then maybe enabling this. But then we did not have anything integrated which will make an API call and something. That's what we're going to do today. So maybe we just start with, I'm going to modify some of the things in my package. I'm going to rename this to, maybe let me quickly do that. Refactor. What did I do? Refactor this into, I'm going to call it as shopping, because that's what we're going to build right now. It's going to be a shopping app. So refactoring that. So it's going to ask for lots of changes, because wherever we had referenced it as quotes, it's going to be shopping now. So that's now done. Also, I'm going to rename this activity name to login, because this was primarily used for login. So instead of this main, I'm going to call it as login. Again, refactor, triggering some more changes. Let's make sure that everything is working. So let's build it once. So that should ideally not break anything. So some of the other things which we have to, these were a couple of big changes which we did. Again, there are some errors, because I think this is more to do with the binding, which would have gotten renamed. These are automatically generated files. So we'll have to make it into, now it'll be called login binding, because we had renamed it to binding from main binding to login binding. So that should fix it ideally. So auto-generated files is taken care now. It should compile it fine right now. So once that is done, a couple of more changes we'll do before we start making the major changes. So that is also taken care. Let's go back to our account manifest and then also rename the app name to shopping. Also, there is something called as login account, which gets shown here. I'm also going to make it as shopping. Also maybe rename this to the title. There was refactor title label. Maybe I'll call it title label. That's also taken care. So ideally, all the major changes needed are taken care. Compile it once more to see things are not broken. So that's also done. I guess we have whatever was a dependency. Okay, there is one more dependency here, which is on the theme, which is again called as Let's Go Dishi. I'm gonna even rename that to shopping. So I delete that. We need to go to the styles. That is actually in the styles folder. So let's go there. Values, themes. Go to the themes. There should be a couple of files. So ideally, it would have made sense to make that change over here, but this is the base where the change should have happened. So let's do that and try see whether things are working. Theme start shopping. So that has modified at a couple of places. So let's build it again. Still have something over here. These are manual changes I am doing right now because I broke some of the things. The earlier one, I guess, hopefully it's taken care. It says successful. So even here, I think it has taken effect. So in our shopping, yep. So Teams is navigating properly. That means it's able to identify all the dependencies. So maybe just compile it once more. Okay, that's taken care. So let's start building the login feature. So now let's build the service side to start with. So for that, there are a couple of things that we need to start doing. One is to make sure that we have the Gradle added for retrofit. So you need to have the dependencies added, which are starting with you need to have a JSON, which is more the parser which we are going to use. Then you need to have the retrofit, which is specific version. So I already have added it over here, and also have the converter for JSON. So 3 things we need: JSON, which is more the JSON converter, and retrofit, the dependency, as well as the converter JSON, which is more for the retrofit. So these are the 3 dependencies that we need to add. And then once that is done, you just need to make a sync of Gradle so that those dependencies get added. So because I already have it, it's already integrated, so I don't need to add it anymore. Next step is to have the manifest having something called as the permission for users permission for the internet, which again we'll have to add. So let me also add that. So for that, first thing is that you add users permission for internet. So let's do that. That's only dependency that we need right away for this specific feature, because we need to connect to the internet. So that permission is already added in the manifest. That's also done. So 2 things taken care. Now let's build the service part. So for that, let me create a folder called at least a new package called services. That's where, okay, misspelled it. Maybe I'll rename it again. Services, that's done. So within the services, I'm going to add something called as a login or an auth service. So I'm going to create a Kotlin class, call it auth service. Actually, that is going to be an interface. So I can even create it as an interface. Kotlin interface called auth service. So that's an interface created, and all that I need is, this is a basic structure for making an retrofit calls, which is going to be an interface on which we will have all the annotations written, like post headers and everything, which we can create as a function. Let's say if you have an endpoint to connect to, so the endpoint that I am interested in, maybe I can show you, is something like this, which I'm already using for my green grocery application. So it's ideally going to have we are starting with the login, and for that I need to have the parameters passed, which is the email and password. So this is an invalid one, which I'm going to try, which should give me an error saying that the credentials are not valid. So invalid credentials, and a valid credential will look something like this. So it should ideally return me the token. So this is the API which we are going to integrate in this project. So I'm just going to keep it aside. I'm going to use it in this. So starting is that I need to have the function created, which will actually represent that login endpoint. So for that, I'm going to create a function which is going to be called login. So this is actually right away showing the endpoint which we need to connect to. And then I need to have a body, like I showed. The body is going to be something like this, where I need to pass an email and password. So those are the 2 parameters which I need to pass to the body. So for that, I'm just going to include the retrofit dependency, and within body I am going to pass a model which should ideally represent my the structure which is more a JSON structure. But for that, we can even create a model, a login model. I already have something called as a model like this, where I am having email and password. So I can even extend this to make it conform to the retrofit format which is needed. So I'm gonna also add something called as a name, because at least I also need to create a user if the user is not existing. For that sake, I'm going to create something called as email, password, and name. So for the name part, I'm going to keep it as optional, so that at least during login, I don't need to pass that value. Rest of the two things, I'm going to keep it as non-optional, non-nullable types. And for this to be serialized, that's the reason I have added JSON. So it needs to be made serializable, so that this object can get translated to the JSON format type. So for that, I need to add the serialized name, which will be similar to what I'll be sending to the server side. So name is what is one parameter is. And the other part is everything has a serialized name. The other one is email. This is again the same representation like that in the body, which I had shown in the Postman. And then the last part is the password. So 3 parameters which I have defined here. And also I need to expose whatever is needed to be made to be exposed outside. So whatever is exposed will be what we are sending to the server. So again, it is part of the JSON annotations. So all of these 3 parameters I'm gonna expose. So 3 of them. Maybe I'll just keep it formatted. So this is passed through the constructor right now, these 3 parameters. So by this we are ready with the JSON structure or the JSON structure, which will transform our model to the JSON structure. So our model is ready. Now it's ready for consumption. It's still showing some error. Let's see what's wrong, because we added a name right now. Let's check once. There is an error. Let's go back. Okay, it's because of this. Okay, it's nothing more. Just that we have this login right now. So it needs to have the function exposed, which will be used for making that API call for login. So I need to now use that login model which I built. That's going to be used here as the body. And also we need to have a call, which is the response, which should be from Retrofit. Make sure that it's part of Retrofit and not in Android Telecom, and include that. And your response should be, for my case, it's going to be of type token. So if you look at it, the response is going to be something like this. So it's again an object which is going to come back with a parameter called token. So this is again something which I will have to build as a model again. So I'm going to build one more called token model. It's going to be a Kotlin data class. It's going to be a Kotlin data class called token model. Add it. And that's going to have this token as a parameter. So I can just maybe call it val. It's going to be token, like we had seen it. It's going to be token. That's the response which I'm going to receive. So that's my token model. That's also created. And I just need to point that over here. Token model. Also done. So my login function is ready, but not yet ready completely, because I still have to make some of the annotations here. First is that it's going to be a post function. It's a post method, and the endpoint is going to be login, because now that's the endpoint. If you look at Postman, this is what I'm talking about. This is the login, which is the endpoint, and the rest of this will become the I'm just going to keep it copied because that's going to become the base URL. So I've just created that as well. So this is the login, and one more thing which we need to add is the header. So application JSON, you can even add a header. So I'm gonna add one more over here called headers, and this is going to be content type colon application JSON. That's my header type. So my endpoint is created for login, which is going to be consumed by my at this point it's going to be the view model which is going to consume, but later we will even refactor in the coming episodes. We will make sure that it is consumed by something called as a repository, which makes that maybe let's see how that is going to work, because a repository can take care of some of the things. View model, at this point I'm just going to expose this one to the view model. So that's within the scope of today's episode. It's going to be view model which is going to be the consumer of this service, but we will modify it later as soon as we introduce the database side to hold some of the data when we actually build the shopping cart application. So let's focus on this one for the time being. Also, I need to now expose this service. I have created a login function which is going to be more to be the endpoint, or at least that is created now. Also, I need to create a singleton of this so that it can be consumed. For that, in Kotlin, I have something called as a companion object, which will make sure that whatever it is returned from here is a singleton. So that's how you create a singleton in Kotlin. It's called companion object. Like I had mentioned, I am going to use a base URL to start with. So this is going to create an auth service, and then it's going to return a retrofit instance. So that's what we're going to do. So base URL is going to be whatever I had copied earlier. Paste it. That's my API. That's my base URL. And then next is to create a function, something called as create function, which is going to return my auth service. So that's my function which is going to return an auth service. And now we need to let's build this one. So for that, I need to create an instance of retrofit instance of retrofit it exposes a builder which can be used to create the whole structure that we need. I can add the converter factory. In this case, it's going to be the JSON converter factory instance. I'm going to create that JSON, and then I need to add the base URL, which is over here. I can just pass that base URL. That's also created, and then I just need to call a build. Can just call a build. So that will create a retrofit instance. Now I can return retrofit dot, there is a create function which is going to actually return the type. In this case, it should be auth service, which is going to get returned. So this create is actually going to return an auth service, which is again going to come through the retrofit instance itself. So I can just say create auth service class of Java. So that's going to return me this auth service, which is the return here. So that is how I'm going to create a singleton. So once this is consumed, we will have this instance available. So that's my auth service right now. It has now endpoint defined, which is called login, to make that API call to login. I have a create function within a companion object, which makes sure that it creates a singleton for us, and then it returns the auth service. Internally, it is also creating the retrofit instance. So passing the base URL. So our retrofit part is taken care right now. Now it's the part where where I need to expose this to the view model, and that is going to trigger some of the changes needed on the view model side. The instantiation part, at least we need to have a different factory for that. So let's get started with that right now. So the auth service creation is completed. So let's go back to our view model right now. So that's my view model. So it did not have any parameters or passed over here, but now we need to pass an auth service instance through this. So for that, I'm going to pass an auth service. I'm going to keep a var auth service. Okay, not on the view model, but on my login view model. That's where the instance it was not accepting any parameters earlier. So right now it's going to accept auth service. So that is already it's not giving me any it's going to not give me any instantiation error, I hope. Let's see. It's going to compile hopefully just fine. It's going to compile just fine, but then however we were instantiating this, let's say if I go to the login if I go to the login activity, if you see, the view model was using the view model provided which was coming along with the lifecycle, Android X lifecycle that was being used. But just right now, because we have extended our view model by passing an instance of or at least dependency injecting the auth service, we have to make a change right now to the view model provider. This will not give us the instance of view model with the auth service instance will not be there because we have never passed it anywhere. So for that, we will have to extend the view models, the view model provider, and create a factory out of it. So let's create that. I'm going to call it as login view model pro factory. So I'm just going to create a package called factory. And within that, I'm going to create a new Kotlin class called, is that going to be a class? Yes, it's going to be a Kotlin class called login view model factory. So this is ideally going to create my instance right now of the view model. So that's the reason I'm going to have a factory, and it has nothing but extending couple of things. One is the view model provider, which was used even in the earlier case where we had it. So view model provider needs to then implement okay, it needs to have we need the instance of, we need actually the factory function, or at least the factory interface is what we need to implement, which has an which allows us to extend the create of our view model. So this will trigger now and implement members. It's going to ask to, like I showed that the interface was having that create function, which we are going to implement. It's not yet implemented, so we can start implementing that. The first step is to see whether it's going to be the same template. The usage is that the model class which we are passing over here, we are checking for its type is assignable from. It's going to see whether it's login model view model class type itself. So class .java. So if it is of this type, then we can create that instance. We can always return login view model, and then I can always pass the auth service which needs to be passed, which is not yet passed over here. We need to pass it as private val auth service. So auth service instance, as soon as it is available, I can always pass it to instantiate this one. So login view model accepts auth service. I guess I don't need this part. Auth service, so it has to be returned as type T. So T is nothing but our view model type, the class of type T. So if this is the assignable class type, then we can create, and this factory can return and create the specific type T. In this case, type is login view model. So if that works, fine. If not, we can always throw an illegal argument exception saying that the type was different and it was supposed to be only login view model, unknown view model type, view model class maybe. So that's my factory. So I'm just going to replace that part where we were instantiating earlier with something else. This view model provider, which was coming from from our wherever it was coming from. So view model provider is coming from the lifecycle, activity X lifecycle, Android X lifecycle. View model provider, that's going to get replaced with something called login view model factory, and this is going to ask for an auth service. So I can always create an auth service right now. So how do I create an auth service? So I already have an singleton available. I can always say auth service dot create. That's going to give you this create instance. So, and then that should ideally return as soon as I do a create. It's going to return. That's not yet done. So this is actually creating the auth service instance. Now also I need to create the login view model instance. So I can always say login view model class Java type. So that should create me the view model right now with passing the instance of auth service. So this should now work for us. So this is the bit where we have integrated the view model now with the by passing. Right now, if you look at the view model, now it can accept the auth service. It's not yet used, but we are going to use it somewhere over here. When this login, we already had a comment kept, do all your login operations, and on completion, return the handle success. So this is where it's going to get called. Some of the modification which we are going to use. Maybe I'll remove this lambda, which was passed earlier to finish it. Instead, I might depend on live data to make those bindings to happen. So that's the next step we are going to do. We are going to make that API call over here in this view model. As soon as a login click is already happening in our case, let's say as soon as you enter an email and password, this login was coming over here, but just that we allowed to make that API call right now whenever this whenever this happens. So that's what we are going to do in the next step. Now let's get started with implementing the login feature itself. So I'm going to start by removing this lambda. Like I said, I don't need this anymore. It's going to trigger some changes already. I'm not going to send it through this lambda. Instead, I'm going to rely on live data like I mentioned. So this is already removed. It's going to trigger or at least ask for some changes. So let's do that changes. It's already going to give me error. Let's take care of those errors right now. So it's asking me to change over here. So login as such, it was returning and giving me a toast. So instead of that, I'm going to get rid of this and let the login happen without any params. So this is already done. And let's start plugging in our auth service over here. As soon as the API call is coming through, we already know the data from email and password available here, which we just need to send. So I'm going to do this auth service call over here. dot login, asking for a model, login model, and it's going to ask for name. I'm not going to pass name. Email, instead I'm going to pass email, which is going to be the email parameter. We have the text we had a couple of we had an email over here, email dot value, because we have already this button is only it's going to come to login only after valid values are entered over here. So I can safely do a double bang over here and then get the value of email. Similarly for password, I can do the same, password dot value, and downcast it or get the value over here. So those two things are coming. I think it's asking for, maybe I'll have to just set a value over here so that it does not ask me to pass that. Let me check that once. I guess, yep. So this is also done. So I have these two. I don't need these two prints happening. I'm also going to get rid of these messages which were kept earlier. It's just, let's just focus on this login. So after login is done, we can always, for this to execute, we need to call the enqueue function and get the callbacks. So callbacks are going to be like object callback of my type, which is retrofit type. So many of these callbacks, I think this is what I'm looking at. Callback of retrofit of type token is returned. So it's going to return a type of token model. So this is my return type, and then let's handle this return, which is going to have a couple of functions. I'm hoping this is the right way of doing it. Callback, implement members. So it's going to have on response and on failure, two implementations. So I'm going to get rid of these to-dos. So to-dos are where we are going to implement the feature. So now as soon as I make an API call, it's going to either return a response or an error. So we can just start looking into that by making an API call, and let's see whether we get a response or not. So on response is going to give me a call and a response. So I can always, if there is an error, I can always check for, first thing is to check for the response code. I can always check for the code, whether if it is 200, I can safely say that's the right response. If otherwise, it's going to be an error response. So let's do the response handling for 200. If we know that it's 200, we would have received a success response. If not, it's a failure response. Similar is the case where if it's an error, we can always say there is an error response. So I'm just going to keep these comments over here, and we'll do the real implementation in a bit. Before that, let me clear out. Looks like there are some errors. I don't know. Let's see whether we need to do some changes. No, it's all good. So we have these error responses happening, and some of the things or changes that we need to start doing now is to add a couple of live data, or at least have to start with let's add the error part. Like what if we have to handle the error? So I can always create an error message mutable live data of type string to show that specific error on the UI side whenever there is an error coming back. So I can create that mutable live data instance. That is one part. And Also, there are in scenarios, let's say if I have I'm going to add a label over here to show if there is an error. So I can always hide and show that bit, but let me add that right away so that I can start integrating it with the UI. So I'm going to add it, maybe split this and add under this button one more edit field. Text view, wrap match parent, wrap content, then maybe have it, I'm just going to keep a text for the time being just to show how it displays. Maybe text alignment, I'm going to have it as center, it's always centered. Also, maybe I'll increase the text size to 20 sp, so it's a little bigger. And then also color, I'm gonna make it as Android color, which is going to be red or something. I don't know what color. Okay, this is good. So that is my text view. And maybe also apply some margin from the button, margin top to 20 dp, so that it can display somewhere over here. So that is my text view. And couple of things can happen. Instead of the star, I'm going to bind it with the field which I had created right now. Login view model dot error message is the field I'm going to bind it with. So that is actually going to show this error message whenever it is whenever we set something. So that data binding is already taken care here. It's a one-way binding, so we don't need to send anything back. Also, I'm going to have the visibility set for this, just to show you how we can enable or hide and show a field based on some changes. So I'm going to say has error. There is a parameter which I have added. It's not there yet, but I'm going to add it. Has error is going to be a boolean, so I'm going to include that as well over here. Val has error, so it will hide and show based on this has error value. So it can be a boolean. So boolean, mutable live data. Let's go back and see whether it's fine. No, it's not, because visibility as such, the binding is not with the boolean, but it's with the view dot visibility, which is something we might have to change that right now. So for that, I'm going to add a new class called bindings, and then I'm going to extend something for this visibility, so that it will take care of that binding. So I'm going to add a function called view, which is coming from android.view dot bind. I'm going to add a function called bind visibility. This is more like an extension to the function, and I'm going to pass it as a boolean. So whatever this is going to do is to modify the is visible property, or the visibility property. Is visible is coming from view in Android. You can see Android X core.view is visible is available. I'm just going to pass the visible feature, and if it is true, it is going to set it to visibility visible. So if you go internally, if you can see internally, it's already taking care of most of the things which we need, like whenever it is not visible, it is gone, otherwise it is visible. So these two, it's both of these cases are taken care. There is also a third version of it called invisible, which actually takes the space, but it will not be visible. So that's a third parameter which I don't think anybody uses much. So that's the third part which could have happened. So this is the bind visibility, and this bindings is available right now like this. So I think this should this is enough to take care of that boolean binding to be made to is visible. So bindings is added, extended. Hopefully still Let me compile it once. Because that's just included, it's still an error. So if binding adapter provides a setter, check that the adapter is annotated correctly. So we are missing an annotation, that's a reason. So let's go back, and I need to add binding adapter. So this is more like an adapter on this is going to be on Android visibility. Again, it uses annotations, so I think this should be enough. Android single colon visibility. If these things get enabled now, we have all good to go. So let's bind it again. Building. Okay, now it's all good, and you can see that it's already in use. So that's the reason these are already enabled. So that's taken care. Now this binding is already taken care, and you can see it's already set that value, which is by default whatever is, as soon as we instantiate here, it's set to false. So visibility is false. So it's already taken that value and setting it properly. So now we have this. Maybe I also need an ID for this. I don't think there is this needed at all, because everything is data binding. I don't need to rely on binding at all, but still let's keep it added. If not, let's not have it at all, because it's I guess it's going to understand based on the binding which has already happened. So binding is taking care of it instead of the ID. So that's also done. Let's go back to, let's close everything. It's not needed. Login activity. So it's triggering a login right now, and it's going to make a login request, and then we are going to get a response, which is going to be the token or an error. So those two are also available. For capturing this, we need a couple of things. So first thing is, let's see whether we are getting this response or not. So I'm going to print to see the token received. I can just say response @ dollar token response dot it's going to come back with a body. So maybe I'll have to handle this to see it. So first thing first, we can already implement this and see. So response.body is already going to come back, and it is going to carry something called as a token with it. So but then we also need to check whether this body is existing or not. For that, we can always do so this is a pattern which is used, a let pattern, which is going to carry the token. So we can get this token and then get that. So it's going to return this model. Maybe I can call it as model dot token. So it's going to carry it through the model dot token. Hopefully this is what we need. Also, to print and see it, we can also call the also, which is going to maybe handle model. This is just for printing sake. This is a pattern. Let also is a pattern used in Kotlin, which can be used. So I'm just going to print the token over here. Token received at dollar model dot token. Okay, that's actually a token because it's already transforming and giving me a token. So I can just call it as token itself. Token, that's a string. So we are definitely going to get a token over here. So I think I can always forecast it, because also is going to definitely have a value. Even before that, let me just see whether I need to, okay, that's okay, this is fine. Maybe we'll also have to do, and this is the way we can get a token. also so let pattern gets me the token. Maybe I need to use this. I have not yet used it. I'm just using, I just receive it over here. And then also I can do an also on this. So maybe I can keep it in one line so that it looks a little more tidier. So first thing first, response body, and also so it returns a token. So this print we can get rid of already. And if it is not 200, it's going to give me an error. I can always return after this statement. If not, I can show this. So if there is an error, I can say error body and again apply a let on it so that I get the error message. And then I can maybe print that one as well. So error message as soon as I receive, maybe I'll just keep it empty for the time being and then do the also part, because that's where the printing has to happen. Also, I'm just getting the error message and I'm going to print that one. That should be fine. So this is the error handling case. So also similar error handling has to happen if there is an error coming through this other part. So it can either come as this one where 200 is something acceptable for us, but then it can also come as an error message. If there is any other kind of error, that is going to come through the on failure part. So I'm just going to keep even this over here. So it's going to be through throwable. So I have a T over here. So I can maybe just use I already know that I need to just print the T. So I don't need to, I can maybe say T dot message is what I received. If it is nullable, I get that and show that as a error message. So this is the other way you can handle the error part. So maybe let's do this and see whether anything gets printed over here. So I'm going to stop this, rerun, and see. First I'm going to handle the error case where I'm going to enter something which is a wrong credential to start with. So this is starting now. Hope things are good. Launch failed or something. Yep. So let's see what's the error. Unable to start activity. Illegal state exception. Required data binding component is null in case activity long binding. A binding adapter in shopping is not static and requires an object used from the data binding component. Okay, something is not correct. Let's go there and see. Login activity. Binding set content view activity login. I guess is it again this login factory not working properly? Maybe I'll have to clean it once. Is there any change? I don't think so. So I guess maybe it's only because I have a param here. Not really, I think. Do I have a parameter? Auth service I have, which I'm passing anyway. Factory is accepting that. Auth service is equal to, okay, I always get confused with how you instantiate in Swift. So let's see whether that was the issue. Now it's crashing, so something is wrong. We'll have to look into that now. Okay, I realize the blunder is over here where I am having this within the class bindings, but ideally it should be an extension of view.binding. So I don't need this to be inside a class, just that I need to just create a bindings Kotlin file and then keep that within this one. So this is the issue I was facing. So let's run it. Hopefully this time it's going to work. Okay, that's launching my screen now. So let's create a credential which is wrong. Maybe I'm just going to make a request and see what happens. Request is made and a response comes back. It should ideally say it's a 401. That means the credentials are wrong. So this part is working now. So you already know that it's coming over here and it should ideally print. Let's keep a watch on this debug lockat. Okay, and then run this. So ideally it should have printed that. I'm just curious. So maybe I can just search for token. It's not a token, it's just printed this error message. So maybe let's handle the token part. Let's see if it is send a request is giving me a token. I'm going to enter the right credentials to see whether it returns a proper token or not. So I did not keep a breakpoint, so hopefully it should have come back. Let's search for this. Okay, am I looking at the right place? Maybe I like to keep a breakpoint and see. I'm really lost touch with Android to look at where the logs are. So let's see. Should be under info, I guess. Okay, so we are actually receiving the token. So login is working with this changes which we did, but then maybe because I'm using a print, it's printing somewhere else. I don't know. So lockat should have given me that. Okay, so let's proceed. So this is also working now. Let me figure out where it gets logged. This print is something coming from Kotlin, I guess. It ideally should be okay, inline printing. Okay, so this part is done. Now we need to do the handling of the error message and the success message. Whenever there is an error, it needs to show in the that specific part it needs to be bound with that other view which I was talking about. The error has to be displayed there. So whenever there is an error coming back, I can always use this immutable play value thing. So error message, I can always push it through that. So these are the couple of places where the error message can happen. I can set a set value. I can just set error message dot value to this, whatever message will be received over here through the let. So ideally that should propagate to the view, and other places also over here where I can just say error message dot value. Maybe I should say message over here as well. Do I have a set value for this? This is an error message which is of mutable live data. So it should have a set value. Okay, it is actually post value of message. This should also work. Maybe I'll also do the same over here. Post value of message. So this is the data binding which should happen right now. Maybe this is an object. I need to convert that to string. So that's the other part. That's also done. So now let's run and see whether it gets, because we already have the data binding working, it should ideally be showing this as soon as this response is back. But even before that, okay, this is the nice place to do it. So I'm gonna do a wrong credential entry right now. wish@mail.com test. Nothing displayed. That means it's not posting yet. The value. I guess that's because we have not done anything for error handling yet. So DQ is happening. We are receiving the error over here. Error message is getting posted here. Let's keep a breakpoint and check whether we are receiving a message. Even before that, let's see whether there is an error message coming back. Error message is coming back. Error body, and then we are trying to get the message and post it over here, and I am hoping that the binding also is taken care. So there is an error message. Okay, the problem is that it's still not hidden. So I have to set this has error to the values has to toggle. That's the reason it's not setting. So couple of binding has to happen over here. So I need to say error has error dot set post value to true. This is the error conditions on which we need to handle it. So couple of places we need to post that. Okay, not here. True, and then at one more place we need to set it to false, where it's a success case. That's somewhere over here. So if a model is a token is returned, then we can set that to false. I guess this was the issue that we were facing. So now let's try that. Error condition. Yep. So it starts showing this error. This binding is already working and it's hitting the server, getting that response back. This is the same thing which I was showing in the on the other side. If you want to format it, let's say if you receive some kind of error over here, we can always do it with checking for those specific cases. Like let's say if it is 401, we can always pass our own custom message saying invalid credentials or something, and then send it to the for the UI to be shown like this. And in this case, if it is successful, now it's your responsibility to take it to a different screen, which is after login. So let's do that right now. This binding is working right now. More or less, this is taken care by the view model itself. So most of the delegation has already happened here. We can still keep improving this approach maybe in the coming episodes, but this is the first way of doing it, where as soon as an error is received, you are sending it to the UI for display. Now is the success case. So on success, we need to navigate to a different screen. So for that, let's create a view, one more activity, a blank activity, maybe empty activity. I'm going to call it as a home activity, where it's going to navigate after, let's say the login is successful. So I'm just going to show you how that is going to work. So home activity is created. So this is where we are going to show the shopping cart, all of the products in the screen later in the episode. So this is where it is going to navigate to. So I'm going to go to the home screen, maybe modify it a little. So I'm going to add a linear layout to start with. Match parent. I'm going to add in text view, match parent, wrap content, text alignment to center, and then add a text called home, maybe just to show that we are come to the home screen. Nothing more. I'm just going to keep it hard coded for the time being, and then maybe text size to maybe 24 sp, a bigger size, and then maybe I have an alignment, maybe margin for this to be 40 dp, so that it shows a little at the center, or not center, maybe still 80 or something. I can just to show it a little lower. So this is my layout, which I am going to show as soon as the login is successful. So let's go back to login activity, maybe to the view model, because that's where all the trigger will start. Let's say, where is the view model? So this is my view model. So I can again create on login mutable live data. I'm just going to keep it as unit, because it's a void callback which can be received mutable live data. So this is what I'm going to use for setting. As soon as, let's say, I receive a token value, I'm not going to use this right now. Token is received and just printing it, but then I'm going to use maybe persist it later in the coming episode, where I'll use this persisted in a database or something, and then we can use that to keep the user logged in. And then once again, let's say we relaunch the app, the user should be taken to the home screen, and then maybe list all the shopping items for him to pick up or something. So that's what is going to happen in the coming episodes. Before that, I'm just going to say token. I'm just going to keep this for future. And then what is this let? Okay, I don't know. Something is propping up. And then I'm going to say on login dot set value. It's going to accept a unit post value unit. So that is more like a void being passed from here. So this is the case where the login is successful and the user should be taken to the next screen. So I am exposing it through the on login callback, which is again a mutable live data. I don't think this is the right way of doing most of the callbacks, because from the documentation I hear that live data is always more or less on the main thread, and if you have to dispatch and all, you need to use something all as a flow or a state flow for that proper dispatching to happen. So that is something I'll pick up in the coming episode. Again, something which I don't really like to do is the view model accepting the service directly. Instead, there should be a different layer which can take care of, let's say, consuming the API service, also saving the data to persist the data and everything, which should be a different different layer altogether, which should be called as repository, I think. Then we should only be exposing the repository to the view model to do different actions, or at least delegate the view model's responsibility is more to delegate those to the repository. That's something we'll pick up in the coming episode as soon as we introduce the database and everything. But this is basically to show how the basic stuff of networking works in this case. So I'm also wondering where this is getting printed, so I need to also investigate that, because I'm just kept a print here also is used for basically printing or logging something. So let's do this bit now. I have this on login, so I can do a binding over in my login activity. I can go back and then say within on create, I can just say view model dot on login. I can say and observe on a lifecycle owner, which is in this case it's this one itself, and I can just start listening to this whenever there is a signal coming through on login. So on login, I can create a private function, call it launch home. But this is not the right way of doing it. Again, this I can it has to be delegated to a different coordinator or something which can take care of this. But for this episode, I'm just going to keep it within the activity itself for launching the new activity. So for this, I need to create an intent call for home intent, Android intent, which should accept, I guess. Should it accept anything? Yes, it should accept the current context and the new class which needs to be instantiated, home activity class.java. So this is my intent, and I need to pass a couple of flags to this intent, home intent.flags, which is basically to say that it's a new task as well as activity on home itself. So because we are going to replace the current login to be this one as soon as the login has completed, so that it does not come back to the login again. So I can say intent.new task, or for intent.new or for back flag, no task, new task on home. So new task on home, flag activity task on home. So this is two flags which we need to set, and then we can say this dot from this start the new activity, start activity, passing this intent, which is home intent. So that's done, and then I can just finish the current activity. So this is what I need to do as soon as I receive the callback through the on login. So this should ideally take me to the new screen. Let's see whether this callback is working now, because we already made this call over here. So that should ideally close this loop altogether. So whatever is happening here is auth service login call is happening to the server, and then we are listening to the callbacks. On response, we get either 200, which is a good response, and then on response, we can say on login complete, we can just post an empty to the server, to the activity, and say to launch the new one. If not, we are showing an error message through another live data, mutable live data object created. So these are the two things which is happening right now. Let's run this and see whether we go to the login, from the login to the home screen, which is the ideal way to end this, at least this episode, to show the basic data binding which is working right now. So right now it is, I think it's going to launch. Just waiting for that. Still build Gradle is happening. So hopefully it's starting. What is migrations? It's just checking for, I don't know. Let's do that. Okay, something. Okay, it's now launching. There was a hiccup. I don't know what. Let's do that. Let's come to the home screen. Start with the invalid entry to show you what all things we have implemented today. It should show an error message right now. Yep. So invalid case. Now let's go to the valid case where I enter the proper credential. This should ideally take me to the home screen. So that's working now. So we have this integration done where a basic auth service is integrated with the view model right now, not the right ideal way, but then lots of things has to be refactored still using the Kotlin way right now. But then I'm just going to conclude this with this bit where we have taken care of the overall flow starting from the login button, click, error handling, response handling over here, and then it takes me to the home screen after the token is received. But then token is not yet used. We will be using this token as a bearer token to make requests to the server to get more content for it to show. Like the home screen is going to anyway show all of the shopping cart items, or at least the shopping items to be displayed. From that I'll be able to add items to my cart, which again I can consume. Let's say if I pass a token, I can get my own cart items later. So these are the things we will look into in the coming episodes. So for this episode, I would say this is the last bit I wanted to show. Hope this was helpful. I am also learning Kotlin. Like you can see, I'm not able to even see where the console logs are, which I need to identify where it is getting printed, or even print is the right way of doing it or not. I don't know. There is also nullable handling of nullable types is an interesting thing which I learned using the let also pattern. There are some other patterns as well, like the run, which I did not find a use case. Maybe I can pick that up with all of those things which can be done for handling nullables. Is an interesting thing. I can pick that up and show you around this area itself how I can use most of those handling of nullable types, which I have learned even with Swift, where you can handle nil in different ways, like a guard and everything. Similarly here there is an altogether different pattern using which you can handle your nullable type. So that's also interesting. I will come back with more in the coming episode. Like this episode if it was useful for you. Keep subscribed so that you can get notification as soon as I post new episodes. Plus share if you like this episode, because only if you share I'll get more users and my monetization will go up. Otherwise it's stuck at some number which is not so great at this point in time. So maybe that will help if you can share a little bit. So until the next episode, it's bye from me.